Hi everyone. Today our presentation is about emotion and language. So I put this here, but I will send you the slides separately so you can see better. I needed some students for my presentation, but because we had to cancel the class today and everything that is happening in the world, anyways, I those are the only two students I could get, Max and Yuri. So I'm gonna now start our presentation. So when you talk about emotion and language, language involves emotions. In this presentation, we'll talk about the role of those emotions in the language learning process. How do they work? Can we learn a language during anxiety? How resilience works in the new context, worldviews and learning a new language? How can we as teachers help our students go through traumatizing memories? Is it possible to unblock the emotional barriers in order to learn a new language? We will discuss some of those topics and exchange experience to try to find a solution today. So, okay, now I will need, So our second slide is is an activity. It's supposed to be to all of us in class, so we have five. I gave you five situations, and let's start with a discussion. And I decided to involve the real world, right? Because I think that's the best way for students to be involved. So the first activity is having the situation from today that we are having in the world today, that it's the virus, the COVID-19, and how it affects our emotion as well when learning. So I put situations of some students and how they dealing with that. So let's start with a discussion involving the current world situation with the COVID-19 pandemic. You will find below some new word reactions over the virus. Choose of our characters and explain how he or she most feel according to the sentences and how those emotions may affect the language process, the language learning process. So I have some situations here, a number 1 to 5. Max, can you choose a number 1 to 5? 3. Okay, so your situation would be, you have to tell me, so explain how this person will feel. So a mother of 2 kids from China who is living in Vancouver for 1 year. She's attending government English classes. She's going for English classes. Now she needs to do the classes online, but she doesn't have lots of computer knowledge. So how do you think she feels? Okay, I will help you with that. First, she's mother of 2 kids, right? She must be concerned also about the school, things like this. School will be closed. She's from China, so maybe she's living nowadays. It's very there are some cases of racism against Chinese people, and so she's living for 1 year in Vancouver. So she's learning English. Now she needs to go online every day, and she has the kids in the house, and she's not very a computer person. So it must be a lot of anxiety, and must be very difficult for her right now to learn a new language. So Yuri, choose a number from 1 to 5, not 3.
4.
4. Okay. A father from Iraq, 64 years old. Who arrived in Canada 3 months ago with his wife and 3 kids, was laid off from his work during the lockdown and needs to keep his English classes online. So what do you think about this guy, how he's feeling?
Well, he's also feeling frustrated, but he has his wife and 3 children, so maybe a wife could stay at home with the children while he goes to the classes. And then if she has to go to classes, maybe he would stay at home with the kids.
No, the classes are online, English classes.
Oh, it's online classes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fantastic. Wife will do the same thing except in another room while he's studying online. So.
Okay, but how do you think this situation, he was laid off from work?
Well, it's terrible.
How do you think the situation will work with his language learning, will affect his process of learning?
Well, obviously it's going to be much less because, he's, the best education, it's, in front with everybody else. But if it's going to affect his education, obviously, but if they're working hard enough and study hard enough, they should be able to continue with their studies.
Okay, so I would say it's gonna be it's gonna affect his process, like his anxiety. He will be thinking about his priority will not be his English learning anymore. His priority will be like find a new job or how I'm gonna support my family. So yeah, now it's just an introduction, okay? And then there was more situations, but we don't have more students here. Then I put some pictures just to illustrate the situations. And then those are questions connected to emotion during those times. Then I put like question like how those people should feel according to the situations I put before. It's because I couldn't read all the situations, like it would be different if we have more people in class. But like airports closed, stay home, keep distance and avoid contact with people, be with your loved ones, and also some people saying Chinese virus. So it affects those people that I was talking about before, like when you say keep distance and avoid contact with people, to international students who came to, let's say, to Canada to learn English, and they need to keep distance and avoid contact. So all the whole experiences get in trouble for that. Also, stay home. So how they can see the country, they can meet people, right? They can't in this situation. Be with your loved ones. Some of them, they are in Canada, they are adults, they come to learn, and let's say they wait for a pathway for university, and they can't be with their loved ones right now, they can't go back to their countries. Also refugees, families who left someone back home. These all influence their learning process. So then here, emotions and language in the learning process. When we're learning, we use the cognitive and affective domains in our brain. So our cognitive domains, takes care of our intellectual skills, and our affective, it's emotions, attitudes. So here in the next slide, I put some more information about the affective domain. The affective domain includes variables such as feelings, attitudes, motivation, self-confidence, fear, and anxiety. And all of those emotions will connect at some point with our cognitive domain, influence our learning process. So they will influence our learning process. Like I put here, some will improve it, and some will decrease our learning process. So the ones are going to increase our motivation, curiosity, self-confidence, willing and open to learn and make mistakes, positive attitude, empathy. The ones who are going to put down fear, shame, anxiety, low self-esteem, loneliness, negative attitude, apathy. So, and then I would give us a video to watch. You will see the link in the slide, and then you can watch through the link. It's a video about how some immigrants I believe in Saskatchewan, they are learning through drama classes. So that's all motivational. So emotion and language. Sorry guys, do you want to come back when I have the next question?
Sure.
Okay, they will come back when I have the next question. So,
Wash your hands.
emotion and language. So, motivation. Since living is about what we want, we found that learning will also be about what we want. We are motivated to learn things that fit into what we want and resist those that don't, especially things that look like potential threats to our happiness or that seem as if they might take away our control of our lives. So, emotion, reason, and memory are all linked together. Learn must involve all of them. This is on the Art of Changing the Brain by James Zhu. And then I put here some of the stimulus that brings us motivation, right? So here it's like music, arts, relationships, faith, sports, technology. Depending of things you like, you want, then you will get motivated. Like again, I can give an example myself. When I learn English, I really love the band Bon Jovi, and I wanted to translate their lyrics, and I wanted to write him letters, and I was going to their concerts. I was really a big fan, and from that I start learning because it was English language. Also, since early childhood, I wanted to visit different countries. I have this thing to learn new cultures. So and I knew I was going to study abroad. Like in my head, I needed to go. I was also very connected with the culture, with the United States culture. In Brazil, we are very like, how can I say, like it's a little bit similar, but a lot of there is I forgot the word. It's like a lot of you remember this word? Like we're getting a lot of culture from United States, like it means influences, but it's not the word I wanted to use. But yeah, like singers from US, Canada, UK, they very famous in Brazil. Also movies, everything, the beautiful cities, and so I knew what I wanted, and then I started learning English since early childhood, and not very early. That's why I have this huge accent. But yeah, it helped. It opened a new world for me. I could meet people from so many countries. I travel to different places. So I'm sure you all would have your own experiences and your own motivation on how you decided to learn a second language. So also faith for me was very important because when I was researching, I found a lot of material in English, and I always felt touched by worship in English. So it's very interesting because it taught me more the worship in English than the worship in Portuguese. And after, when I came even to Canada, I learned more at Providence, and now even my faith vocabulary is more in English than in Portuguese. It's interesting, and I have friends and I know people with different. They call like the emotion language. They have like. Have a friend who was living for many years in Bolivia, and it was kind of the first country he went after Brazil, and his wife's from Bolivia, and then he got like Spanish is his like language, emotional language, like a language from the heart. I don't know, like he feels more from Spanish language than Portuguese language, and I feel that in English too. Maybe because I was always so connected with the language, with the culture, with the with the values and everything. So but also loving my language, Portuguese, and my country. So the next slide, emotions and language, is a discussion. So let me asking here my students to come back. Maybe just Yuri, because Max went upstairs. Yuri, can you sit here? I have another question to my students. So, what was your motivation to learn a second language?
Well, my main motivation to learn a language, because I was planning to go abroad to the United States. That was my biggest motivation, but of course, for the career, for the future, for everything else, it's great if you know more than one language.
Okay, so I would say your motivation was instrumental and integrative, because instrumental is the motivation that it's for your that you want to use this, you want to learn that language for getting a good job, for grow your career, and your integrative is because you want that language to connect with the people, for the culture, right?
Sure, absolutely.
And how do you think we can motivate students in a classroom?
Well, you just have to simply explain them this is the best things for their future, in order to do it. Back home, we have the little slogan, if you will: the more languages you know, the better person you can be, or something. But I think for those young students, that would be probably great to explain this is the best for their future, for a job, for career, for anything else.
I see. Also because Yuri is from Ukraine and his culture is more objective, I would say, than, let's say, Latin America culture. And for them, I truly believe what he's saying is more, I believe the instrumental motivation, it plays a stronger role than the integrative in while getting connected. Like they need to learn that this will really gonna bring success, will bring something to their lives. So yes, thank you, Yuri.
You're welcome.
Okay, so now the next slide, because we already spoke about motivation, right? So now we're gonna talk about anxiety, because those are two main points, right? Motivation increases the student learning process, and while anxiety will decrease. So emotion and language, anxiety. How anxiety works during the learning process. So I was talking here about Stephen Krashen's, I don't know if that's the way to pronounce, but Stephen Krashen's theory. He was a researcher, an author of many books, all connected to linguistics, second language acquisition. So, and he has a theory of second language acquisition and the affective filter hypothesis. So, according to him, low motivation, low self-esteem, anxiety, introversion, and inhibition can raise the affective filter and form a mental block that prevents comprehensible input from the target language. So new information cannot pass efficiently through the amygdala affective filter in the brain to gain access to the brain cognitive processing and memory storage areas, such as the left prefrontal cortex. So yes, according to his theory, that is a block, right? And that's what's happened when we get fear or anxiety, like when you feel extremely fear, your kind of your own body shuts down the other areas of your brain that you're supposed to think or learn something. No, you wanna defend yourself, right? Your defenses are higher than your let's say, your memory there. So next slide, I just put some pictures. My anxieties have anxieties, and also negative. A sentence that I like it. That I found, like, a negative attitude is like a flat tire. You can't go anywhere until you change it, and it's true. A negative attitude will provoke damage in the learning process, right? So, and how do you change it then? How do you work on that? So, that's our next slide, which is emotion and language, like emotional resilience. So, how to overcome anxiety in the classroom. It's important to support emotional resilience and emotional sensitivity. So, emotional resilience represents how we react toward adversities of life or negative feelings. Emotional sensitivity is the capacity to read other feelings or emotions. In a second language class, it's important to understand also the cross cultural factors. They play a huge role when talking about emotions. It's important to create an environment where all students will feel safe, happy, and appreciated. So in the next slide, you see two examples when the lack of motivation and confidence, together with cross-cultural factors, will crack the learning process. So it's here put a picture of resilience with a child with a little scratch in the leg, and then it's saying the process of handling resilience is the process of handling stress and recovering from trauma or adversity. So, and some people, according to researchers, some people will be more successful on learning, let's say, a new language or in any learning process when they are more resilient. It's inside, like when they had adversities in life and they understand this will pass. They are very optimistic. They tend to be more successful in their learning process. So now is the two examples. So first example, a teacher from Canada was making jokes about accents of students from Eastern Europe in a class where the majority of the students were Canadians and only two international students from Latin America. So, how these students felt? Like, which kind of did it help the learning process? I don't think so. Like, I believe people were laughing in the class, right? So it's even worse. Like for the native speakers in the class was more okay. It's fun. Maybe most of them, a lot of them would not realize what the Latin Americans were feeling, and some of them who would have the cross-cultural competence, they would see it. They would, or the sensitivity to the other feelings, they would feel it. So half and half. But so emotions that could decrease that the process of learning in those situations, like shame, because the Latin American students felt shy and didn't interact during the class. Angriness, like the international students felt disrespected. Low motivation, those two students didn't feel motivated to learn anything that afternoon. Self-esteem, low self-esteem. The students were feeling like their accent was something very bad. Isolation, the student doesn't feel confident to become friend with the native speakers like after that. So it's these all will play badly in the learning. So now another example. Students from Brazil didn't understand why it was so hard for him to learn Spanish as a second language until he found out that since both languages were very similar, he wasn't put enough effort to learn it. Also, the cultural ego towards the Spanish versus Portuguese speakers in Latin America was playing a role. So, without realizing, the student was was not motivated enough to learn, because he knew when he would find a Spanish speaker, he would connect with that speaker. They would understand each other. So he didn't put enough effort, and he didn't even realize that he was not that motivated. There was no maybe not other stimulus like relationship or something like this. So the languages are similar, and he didn't feel the need to learn Spanish. And the cultural ego. Brazilians, they don't like when people think they are Spanish speakers. Like they kind of proud to be the only Portuguese speakers in Latin America. It's kind of funny, but Brazilians and Argentinians having some issues sometimes. Like they say one is better, the other one is better, and Brazilians hear very often abroad that oh, you speak Spanish, right? People think Brazilians speak. Some people will assume Brazilians speak Spanish, so they all say no, we speak Portuguese, and they are kind of proud of their language. So deep on himself, he had this ego strong, and it was difficult for him to get into that language, even if he maybe he needed for some instrumental purpose, and but was not that much needed because he could understand the people. So then that became more difficult for him to learn because of those emotions. So our next slide, you see examples of productive emotions in the learning process. So I'll give you examples of productive emotions. So Lily, a student from Japan, loves to listen international bands, and because of her passion for the Beatles, she started to translate songs and learn English. As a teenager, she was dreaming about talking to them one day, and it pushed her to learn more English. So emotions, they are high motivation. The student used her favorite music to learn a second language, and her dream of meeting the singers in person kept her very high motivated. So cultural empathy. Lily enjoyed everything about international music. So another example is Juan is a student from Mexico, very outgoing. He loves to meet new people and sees everything in an optimistic perspective. He went to USA for only 1 month ESL experience, and his English developed the equivalent of 1 year of studies in Mexico, back in Mexico. So how it helped him, right? So emotions. Confidence. The student confidence gave him social skills to interact with lots of people. Curiosity about a new culture. The curiosity about a new culture experienced day by day kept him high motivated. Positive attitude. One is very optimistic, and it helped him in the learning process. So now so the situations below provoked a positive or negative emotion in the learning process. Did the students overcome trauma and anxiety? If not, what they should do? So it's another interactive activity. So I'm gonna have to call my students. Yuri, can you come here? Max, can you come? Okay, you can sit here, so Max can sit here. So I can start. Okay, I'm gonna read, and then you guys will tell me your opinion on what the students should do, and if the situation with the emotions provoke positive or negative learning. So you're gonna tell me if the emotions, whatever they were feeling, was really good or bad feelings, and how they can work with that. Okay, how they can make it work. So I'm gonna say a situation. Yuri will say the first what he thinks, and then you can say. Okay, so a refugee from Colombia in Canada is learning English while studying the Bible. He learned about Christ, and he's very touched when hearing worship songs in English. He connected with the local church and was already invited for lunch last weekend there. His dream now is to have enough English skills to become a missionary in Africa. So, is his motivation, and whatever the situation that he was brought to helping him on learning, is it helping him on learning English? Yuri?
I would probably say yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll probably say yes.
Okay. Did it help to overcome trauma? Because it's a refugee.
Yeah, of course. Found he found his. He started learning more about the Christ, and he was learning this through the English language, and it's easier for him, I would assume, because he was, like you mentioned, he was touched, right?
Yes.
So since he was touched, I think he had his personal way of improving his English in order to learn more.
Okay. And Max, do you think it's also motivates him helping? He has this dream he wants to go help people in Africa speaking English. So it helps him, right? Learning English. Yeah. Okay. So another question. A permanent resident in Canada didn't have enough literacy classes in her first language. Now she is struggling to learn English grammar because she didn't have enough. She didn't learn well how to read and write in her own language. So she was raised in a
language, right?
yes, in the native. So she was raised in a very poor community in Angola, and she thinks that she isn't intelligent enough to learn English. Her husband is a truck driver, and she spends all her days alone at home. So, how do you think she feels?
Like Taraz?
No, Taraz is a truck driver, but I mean, how do you think this lady feels that she needs to learn English, but she thinks so? How is her self-esteem? Does she likes herself?
Well, obviously she's not motivated, right?
No,
because
she doesn't like
she
herself.
did not have literacy back in her home country, right? So if you do have basic education from your own country, then it's always going to be easier for you. Otherwise, you start everything brand new, like you start learning like for the first time ever, right? So if you don't know how to write in your first language, right? Imagine how it is to write in the second language, especially English. But yeah, I think if she has the time and will, then she will.
Yes, also she needs more interaction with people, right? Because her husband is a truck driver and he's always on the road and she spends her days alone at home. So if she doesn't connect, and maybe she's not connecting because of her self-esteem. So she feels inferior, she's not going out, connecting, and it just provokes her, it damages more and more her learning process.
Yeah.
Right? So, okay. So, okay, I will call you guys next time. Thank you.
Around of tape.
I don't know. Emotions and language again. For us as teachers, it's crucial to be aware of all those emotions, feelings, and attitudes in order to keep students motivated. Cultural competence, emotional resilience, and emotional sensitivity need to be in place in order to build a healthy, safe, and welcome classroom. So below you'll find some advices from Edgy on the book Teaching and Learning in the Language Classroom on how to start to create motivation in the classroom. So this is the next slide. So some of the advices are give some time to considering group dynamics and to how build cohesiveness within the class. So it's very important to have students interacting to each other and having a dynamic together. Make sure that there is sufficient variety of input, listening, reading, of pace and intensity, of interaction and of activity to allow learners to work in their own style and with their own strategies. That's good, important too. especially because they will have different strategies and different worldviews as well. Show awarenesses of differences in motivation, in emotional responses, in strategies, and etc. And encourage students to build awareness of their own preferences. Acknowledge that language learning is a serious endeavor requiring perseverance and involving anxiety, and be sure to give reassurance. So that's important too. So our next slide says emotional language. The best methods are therefore those that supply comprehensible input in low anxiety situations, containing messages that students really want to hear. These methods do not force early production in the second language, but allow students to produce when they are ready, recognizing that improvement comes from supplying communicative and comprehensible input and not from forcing and correcting production. This is from Stephen Krashen. So, yes, it's our bibliography. So, now what I can, you should watch the video, and we would have more discussion if we had our colleagues, right? And if we were doing it in class, but do it to this situation of the world now with coronavirus and everybody at home, it became more difficult. So let's do another thing here. So I want to just talk about some